Today we're going to be subtracting integers, and if you remember, integers are simply numbers that can be either positive or negative. So let's take a look at the first problem that we're going to do. We're going to start with -9, and we're going to subtract -2. We'll be using both a number line and an integer chip website to do this. So when I start on my number line, I'm going to be using the comparison of hot air balloons. So I just want to remind you that if you are subtracting or if you're using negative numbers, then we represent those by sandbags or puffs of air. You could say taking away puffs of air, but we're going to use sandbags. And the positive numbers are going to be represented by thinking about adding puffs of air to a hot air balloon. Okay? So we're going to start with this first one. And to show this on a number line, I'm simply going to think about -9. So that would be like putting 9 sandbags onto my hot air balloon. So if we're starting at 0, that's going to weigh my balloon down all the way to -9, right? And now we're taking away. So we have to remember what that means. Subtraction is taking away, not adding. So now we're going to take away 2 negatives or 2 sandbags, right? So we want to think about that. If you're in a hot air balloon and you get rid of or you take away 2 sandbags, is that going to weigh down your balloon or is that going to make your balloon go up? Well, if adding sandbags makes your balloon go down, if you get rid of them, it actually makes the hot air balloon go up. So our answer here is -7. Okay? Now let's take a look at the integer chips. Okay, so I have added -9 or 9 negatives to my integer mat, right? I just pulled them down from the top here. So if I'm starting with 9 negatives, this is now telling me take away 2 negatives. So I'm actually not going to add more onto this. I'm going to take away 2 negatives. I'm going to put them back. And so after I do that, I'm left with 7 negatives, which is exactly what we had found on the number line. Now let's go back to this number line, and we're going to solve the problem 7 minus 14. So again, I'm going to consider that these are actually 2 positive numbers, and it is kind of important to know that because this isn't a -14, even though there is this minus sign in front. We're going to be looking at this as a subtraction sign. So it's 7 minus 14. So I'm going to start with 7 puffs of air. And then this is telling me to take away 14 puffs of air, right? Because it's a positive. So to take away 14 puffs of air, well, if you're taking air out of a balloon, it's going to make it go down. So it's going to go down 14. So it's going to start out by going down to 7 and then all the way down to -7 for my answer. So this is actually also going to be -7. And let's check out my integer chips to try this out. So I'm going to start with, I need to start with 7 positives. And this time we have to take away 14 positives. Now, this is a little bit more challenging than when I had my addition. Because when we were adding, it was easy. We just had to go grab some more chips and put it down here, right? And then see if we had any 0 pairs. Well, the problem now is that I don't have 14 positives to take away. All right. So I have to figure out a way that I can do that. And here's what I want you to consider. We need to have at least 14 positives. So what if I took this and I ended up, and I did this. Am I still starting with that value of 7 here? Is that still happening? Yes. these cancel out. Remember, these are worth nothing. I can add as many of these 0 pairs as I want, and I'm still starting out with my positive 7, right? We've got the positive 7. These technically aren't worth anything. Now, the good thing is that when I'm adding these 0 pairs, I'm also adding positives, right? So I can keep doing this until I have enough positives to take away 14. Okay, so what I've done is I ended up adding on these 7 positives and 7 negatives, which again, they all cancel out. I'm still starting with positive 7. But the question is, now can I do what I've been asked to do? Take away 14 positives. I do have 14 positives. So if I go ahead and I'm going to circle all 14 of these positives, I can take them away. They go to nothing. We have nothing. These go away. All right. What am I left with? Well, after I took away 14 positives, I was left with 7 negatives. Let's try another one. Oops. I'm going to reset. Okay, so let's go ahead. For these two, I'm actually going to show, well, let's start with the number line. Okay, so for this one, we're starting at -3. So that means I've added, or I'm starting with 3 sandbags on my hot air balloon, and I'm asked to take away 5 positives. And so I have to remember, if I'm taking away positives or I'm taking away puffs of air, well, taking puffs of air out of a hot air balloon makes it go down. So it's going to go down 5 more. Whoops. And I'm going to end up at -8. So it's really important to pay attention to the signs of the numbers you're subtracting. And let's go ahead and try it here. So for this one, I'm going to show you something a little different. So we did start with 3 negatives, right? And it tells us to take away 5 positives, and we've run into that problem again. We don't have 5 positives. So what we can do is we're going to go ahead and start by putting on 0 pairs. So I'm going to do that until I have 5 positives that I'm able to take away. Okay. So I'm still starting with something worth -3, but now I have these positives to take away. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of the 5 positives, right? Subtract 5 positives. We've done that. And now let's kind of take a look at the problem we're left with. Once we have taken that out, we're actually left with an addition problem, right? We're left with 3 negatives plus 5 negatives, sorry. And so if you remember from our addition, if we have -3 plus -5, well, that's -8. And we can count them up, right? So we ended up taking this problem, -3 minus 5, and we actually turned it into a subtraction or an addition problem, right? We ended up adding, and let me go ahead and I'm going to write this in. We ended up doing -3 plus -5 to get our answer here, right? So let's try this next one. And we're gonna, whoops, reset. The next one says we're gonna start with 6 positives. And we have to take away 2 negatives. Again, here's the problem. We don't have 2 negatives to take away. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to add these 0 pairs. So if I add on 2 0 pairs, I now can take away 2 negatives, right? So let's do that. I'm still starting with the value of +6, but I actually can take away 2 negatives. So these are gone, right? These go away. And now I'm left with the problem of positive 6, right, plus positive 2. And we know that that is going to give me positive 8. Interesting. So this answer equals positive 8, but think about the problem we had to do to solve it. And what I mean by that is this final problem over here. After we were able to actually do the subtraction, we ended up with an addition problem. And the addition problem was 6 plus positive 2, which gave us the 8. Okay. Let's consider these other two problems up here that we had done before using the integer chips. -9 minus -2. Well, we actually can solve this as an addition problem as well. It's -9, and what we ended up doing was we added 2, positive 2. And -9 plus positive 2 was -7, right? Because we have opposites here. This problem, we changed it to addition 2. We did 7 plus -14, right? Remember, we went down because we were taking away puffs of air, which makes you go down. And that, of course, 7 plus -14 is -7. We actually can always add to solve subtraction problems, which is kind of a weird idea. Let's take a look at something here. Okay. When we subtract integers, and when we subtract integers, we are really changing it into an addition problem. So the problem becomes, in this case, if we did -4 minus 2, the real thing we solve to get the real answer is we do -4. Instead of subtracting, we add, and we add the opposite of the positive 2, which is -2. Here we would do 7 minus -8. Well, we change it to addition. Instead of subtracting -8, we add positive 8. So basically, we're doing the opposite of the last two parts of our problem. We would add 8. Let's see, let's look at these and see if that works out. Some of these we've already done, right? All of these problems turn out to be addition problems to solve. So let's look at this last one here. -4 minus -10 is positive 6, which it doesn't look like it should be, but it is, right? Because think about it. We're taking away sandbags. When you take away sandbags, it goes up. So we're actually adding positive 10 to the -4, right? -4 plus 10 is 6. Here, well, in this case, we're subtracting puffs of air, right? Which is the same thing as making this hot air balloon go down. So we would be doing 4 plus -10, which is -6. So using this rule here, where we keep the number the same at the beginning and then we just add the opposite, that's what we're doing, adding the opposite, that's how we can solve subtraction problems.